So picture this. You're paying for your morning coffee. All of a sudden, you're prompted to add a tip to the order. You might be thinking to yourself, you don't want to be cheap, but with more and more stores adding tip options, is it possible that tipping culture is getting a little out of hand? Yes, we're going there. Well, it turns out you're not alone. According to a new survey from WalletHub, nearly 3 in 4 Americans believe tipping culture has gotten out of control, and more than half of the respondents believe businesses are replacing employee salaries with customer tips. Joining us now, we've got Cortney Norris, Oklahoma State University Assistant Professor of Hospitality and Tourism Management, to help break this all down for us. Great to have you here with us, Cortney. So we got to know right off the bat, where does the salary end and where does tipping begin?
That is a great question. And, you really have to think about where you are and where you are dining or where you're ordering. If you are standing at a counter ordering a drink or food from that person, they are most likely making the standard minimum wage, which varies by state. And if you're sitting in a restaurant being served by a bartender or a server, they are most likely making a sub-minimum wage. And tips make up more than half of their income. So if you're at a counter, tipping is cool if you want to do it, but you're definitely not obligated in any way. But tipping in a restaurant where the server is making a sub-minimum wage kind of makes or breaks their livelihood.
It's interesting that you bring up state by state, and that's a very important component that you led off with a moment ago. We think about California, we think about what took place specifically with companies like Chipotle and needing to make sure that as they're paying this new higher minimum wage, where the customers may say, okay, well, you're getting that higher minimum wage now, so we're not as inclined to tip. How is that going to perhaps, and excuse my pun here, but how is that going to tip the scale one way or the other?
I think as people become more aware of what individuals are making, it's going to impact tips in general. But you don't know state by state. I mean, that's a lot of different minimum wages. So California, they may be making $13, $15 an hour, but in Oklahoma, they're making $2.13. So do you not tip or do you tip depending on that? And I guess it's just, knowing the rules of the place that you're in and the visiting, and what that minimum wage looks like for that employee.
It's a great point, and we think about the changes that have been made even in New York here with some of the delivery apps and tipping after you've already taken on delivery instead of adding it prior to. Have we noticed any considerable shift? It's early innings in this, but I imagine that there's going to be some type of delta between what the tips were like and the propensity to tip prior. Now, with this change implemented, that customers might say, all right, well, I've forgotten about that order or what I even had delivered.
Yeah, the digital tip, the research in the academic space hasn't really caught up with the digital transformation that's happened in the tipping space, excuse me. And so there isn't any academic insights that I can offer there other than, what I as a consumer also feel. And, during COVID, we were all too ready to tip extra and make that happen for that employee because they were out there making us deliveries. And now I think that that's cooled off a lot and people are losing their interest in going above and beyond to tip that employee more money.
Just lastly, while we have you here, Cortney, my first job was in the service industry. I worked for a great place called the Stadium Grill in Westchester, Pennsylvania, and then went on and worked at one of the diners nearby thereafter. Tipping was vital to being able to make sure that I was having enough to make sense continuing to work at that job. What is perhaps just a moment of mindfulness here as people are going into any type of capacity where they are spending, where they can think about their checklist for tipping?
I think first and foremost, it's, am I sitting down and ordering or am I standing up and ordering? And if you're standing up and ordering, that's just an extra addition on top of their hourly wage. Whereas, if you're sitting down, that is your tip is the major source of their income. That is all of that's coming because they're not getting a paycheck per se because it's all taken from taxes. So the money that they're making is all in tips. So sitting down or standing to order, I think that's the first thing you should ask yourself. And, is this person going above and beyond? If they did a little bit extra for me and I am standing at the counter to order, then go ahead and tip them a little bit if you feel so inclined. I think a lot of people feel that social pressure as you're standing in front of that person with a, tablet in front of you and you're like, hey, they're watching me. Like, I feel like I have to tip. And I feel like that has to stop. You can't feel that, you shouldn't feel that social pressure because that person's making a standard minimum wage. Whereas in the restaurant where they're not standing over you, those people need that tip in order to continue doing that work.
Certainly. Cortney, thanks you so much for taking the time here, giving us some helpful tips here on tipping. Cortney Norris, Oklahoma State University, Assistant Professor of Hospitality and Tourism Management. Appreciate it.